San Marcos is the oldest masonry fort in the United States, in the continental United States. There's a few older National Park Service sites in Puerto Rico, also Spanish forts. I think it's a good emblem of this idea that the Spanish were here long before the English even came around. St. Augustine is about ready to celebrate its 450th anniversary. It's this commemoration of this history that will begin in 2015. Looks back at the time when the Spanish arrived, and as they came in, of course there were American Indians here, largely the Timucua, people who had lived here for eons, had called this home. The newcomers, of course, changed quite a few things, not only for the Timucua, but also by just being here. The Spanish were responding to French attempts to settle in the land just to the north of us here. So from the very beginning, St. Augustine's story is a story of struggle. For quite a while, for 107 years, the Spanish are here, and they build 9 different forts, wooden forts. And there are many great things about Florida. However, the humidity and the bugs, like termites, created a little bit of problem for those 9 forts. As those 9 forts came in, essentially they rotted away or were torn down, and also burned down at least once on purpose by their own soldiers. So in the first 107 years, the Spanish built those 9 forts. 9 wooden forts, followed by a 10th fort, and that's the Castillo de San Marcos. Made out of coquina, shell rock, more permanent. For the settlers of the town, it had to be an amazing moment when they realized that the Spanish government was serious about this place. Figure these coquina blocks, the shell rock. I kind of consider it the best Lego set you can imagine. 400,000 blocks, slowly handcrafted, placed together and built. It was a huge expense of time, but it was also a huge expense of money for the Spanish government. At that point, when this place gets started in 1672, it takes about 23 years to finish the first phase of construction. Though the Castillo today seems somewhat unchanging, it's actually changing all the time, both in the historic period. Not too long after they finished it, the town was attacked by the English out of South Carolina, who took the town. So they built new defenses around the town and tied them into the Castillo's defenses. Starting in the 1730s, they also remodeled the fort fairly heavily as well. The change continues in some ways. We're putting in new exhibits and things like that, but also the difficulty of preserving a nearly 340-year-old fort it's a very difficult task, particularly with 800,000 visitors a year. This unchangeable fort is very changeable, in that when visitors come in and as they touch the walls, which we don't want people to do because we want to keep them around forever, they're not just rubbing away pieces of coquina or plaster, but the Castillo's story is also written on its walls. During the Spanish period, you have soldiers who are serving their time here. And for soldiers all throughout the ages, sometimes the most boring time you can ever have is in garrison duty. And when visitors look closely, they'll actually see graffiti left by Spanish soldiers. After the Spanish were here, but during their first period, the British come in. And some of that graffiti that's on the walls is from British soldiers. Spanish come back for a short period, and then the Americans buy Florida. When they buy Florida, then you end up with another story written on the walls. In fact, some of those Spanish ships carved by those Spanish soldiers, flew Spanish flags, but American soldiers changed the Spanish flags into American flags. So if you're serving time here in the military, sometimes it's boring. During the American period, the U.S. Army also used it to hold American Indians as prisoners. During the First Seminole War in the 1830s, Osceola's band was held here. Osceola himself held here briefly. In the 1870s, some of the Plains Indians, Kiowa and Comanche and others, are held here. And then in the 1880s, the Apache, groups of the Apache, including Geronimo's band, are held here. And they too, like the soldiers who spent time here earlier, found time slow, tedious, and boring. And so they left their marks on this fort as well. So the stories of this place, it's written in the architecture. It's also written by those what seem to be simple scribblings in the walls. Castillo de San Marcos, like all our national park sites that tell the story of the history, really they contain the stories of the people who came before us. And I think that's incredibly powerful for visitors who come today. So I'd invite folks to come out to the Castillo de San Marcos and come and visit this history, learn this story, this surprising story of many people.